Trap it out.
Welcome to Otaku Shot, where it's nothing but liquor and anime. I'm Shane.
I'm Scott.
And tonight we actually have a friend of mine who's our starring guest.
Hey guys, it's Alex. It's good to be with you here tonight, and I hope we have a good conversation.
That is good.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody. That was good. All right, to start the night, what are we drinking tonight, Scott?
Well, right now we're sipping on Blue Moon. We started off the night with some Bacardi.
The Mango Bacardi,
Yeah.
which was, we've finished off pretty much the entire bottle. It was all right.
I liked it.
I know you did.
I picked it out.
I know you did too. Anyway, we're going to get into things. Tonight's episode that we actually wanted to cover is dubs versus subs. But before we actually get into that, I want to give kind of a background on Alex and what he knows about anime. So Alex, what do you know about anime?
Yeah, guys, here's what you need to know. I'm kind of the alien when it comes to the conversation here. I have not seen that much anime at all. I do recall I have finished one series, Death Note, which I absolutely adored.
Classic.
Instant classic. I think, that's widely agreed in the anime community. I remember growing up with anime in these small bits. I remember sitting on the couch one night with my dad, and we were watching Naruto. I think I just guilt-tripped. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guilt-tripped him into watching it with me. And it was this weird, just very flamboyant scene, and all these critters were flying. And I couldn't help but to wonder what my dad was thinking about me, like, as a character,
That's one thing you always wonder when you're watching anime.
No,
your parents are thinking about it.
I remember one time I was watching something on Netflix, and my mom comes upstairs and goes, "Are they speaking Spanish?" No, Mom, it's Japanese.
You wouldn't understand. Yeah, so this was happening.
Literally wouldn't understand.
So the entire time I just felt shame. So perhaps I associate anime with a sense of shame and guilt, which I don't think is justified.
Not at all.
No, it's not
at all.
No.
Luckily, this was not reinforced with me watching Death Note, which I think is a highlight in my anime review.
The point here is that Alex has not seen a ton of anime, so he's kind of here to shed the light on the idea of, a person who really has not seen a lot of anime and comes into people who have seen a lot of anime. So, plus he's good with the dub thing because have you watched mostly dubs?
I would say so. At least from what I can remember, I recall seeing Death Note. Originally, I think I saw a few dubbed episodes on Adult Swim.
Adult Swim is where it's at.
Right, exactly. And that influenced me to go further, and I think I watched the entirety of the series with subs, which I don't regret, because I think it gives a better feeling of authenticity.
Okay.
So I think that was important.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think I definitely don't regret seeing the series or hearing the series in sub version.
Yeah, I think that's why subs are so much better. It's just you get more of a feel of like what's being conveyed. I mean, even if you have to read it, really, it's like hearing the emotion that's portrayed is more like it feels more genuine. Whereas when you read it in dubs, it's like it kind of sounds like they don't really know what they're supposed to be expressing.
Or even if they watched the anime.
Yeah.
Who even knows that they did that? Anyway, the first thing I want to get to actually is so recently. So me and Scott are really big into Haikyuu, and recently
we're going straight into it, huh?
Yes, we are. So immediately, recently they released Haikyuu is finally getting dubbed.
No.
And they released a small soundtrack and video for what the dub sounds like for Haikyuu, and I gotta say, it was god awful. It was so bad. Especially hearing voices. The one thing that we have been really talking about recently is how when you hear a voice for so long also, especially when you're watching the subs, that getting into the dub and hearing the dub voice for it just sounds kind of cringy.
Yeah, it definitely sounds weird. And I mean, maybe some of that is just like you're used to this person sounding a certain way, so when you hear it differently, it's like, that's weird. But
yeah.
it also, I mean, it seems like the voices just don't even really match up.
Yeah, I know.
Like, especially with Hinata, it's like I feel like his voice is supposed to be like
high pitched.
Yeah, like high pitched and kind of like
kind of childish,
kind of wimpy a little bit. Like, but and it's not that like in the dubbed, he just sounds like a grown man who's just a little bitch. Like,
yeah, kind of true.
Not not like somebody who's actually like yeah, they're small and like not very intimidating, but like they have actual skill. Like he just sounds like a bitch. Like
he does sound like a bitch. I will say though that like for the dub, both voices were very bad, and Kageyama's voice was particularly bad to me. And so for Hinata's voice, I would say that yeah, you got that little like adult kind of bitchy like little kid voice. But, like, for Hinata in the sub...
What is he doing at Kurosuno?
What is he doing at Kurosuno? And also the worst actual way to pronounce Japanese words. Thank you,
Wait,
Funimation.
are we talking about Hinata or Hinata?
Oh, gross.
It's funny how you lose, like, the correct pronunciation for, like, that culture. That's why I think you kind of lose that authenticity. Because you leave that... You remove that aspect of that culture.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's against like what I predict would be the artist's vision. You know? Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
But the thing about Haikyuu and the voice acting for it is that so you go through the time of listening to this series and you hear these voices that you just like grow to love and enjoy, and every time you hear them, you know who exactly they are. And then when you're watching the dub portion of it, you just hear these voices that you're not very familiar with if you've watched the sub, and they just don't go with the voices that you possibly imagined for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with, at least for that. But it was just so gross to hear what the Haikyuu members sound like after I've watched the sub for it.
Shane, did you see any like advantage in hearing this the dub at all? Did you see like any reason to believe like that was better in your experience?
There was no possible way that would be better.
Nothing.
To me. Nothing.
Okay.
So to me, subs are like also since I'm trying to study Japanese as a profession. Obviously, I want to listen to subs more because I don't want to hear the Japanese voices of it. I want to hear the English. I want it, not the English.
I want to switch up there. I was like, wait, you want to listen to dubs? What is wrong with you?
What are you talking about?
I thought the whole thing of this was...
Anyway, fuck you guys.
Maybe
We're getting
later.
back to it. But yeah, I love to hear the Japanese voices, especially since it just sounds a little more authentic to me. And... hearing the Japanese voices, since they were, like, it's originally done that way, it just, like, it goes with it more. And the way that they have to do voices and to match up with, like, when they do dubs, because of the way that they wrote the voices when they're showing the mouth movements in the animation, they make it Japanese. So therefore, when they're doing the dubs, they have to go over the words and make them seem like they are going in the right format to what the Japanese version was like, while also keeping the translation.
And usually they don't even, like, they do not do a very good job. Like, I mean, when we watched Your Name in the dubbed, like, I didn't have too much of a problem with the voice acting, really. I mean, there were some parts where it sounds like the audio was, like, shittily just smashed together. Like, it didn't
the audio sounded weird. The audio sounded super weird.
Especially with, like, Mitsuha's little sister. Like, it sounded like she was just recording in a totally different universe than everybody else. But anyway, but the main thing that kept throwing me off is watching them try to say things, but then their mouth just did not move the right way at all. And I was like, I mean, this is a real heartbreaking moment right now, but your mouth is just not, it's not saying the words.
It's distracting, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
It totally takes you out of it.
Yeah, speaking of distractions, actually, I think, coming from kind of taking a left turn, I wanted to ask you guys about subtitles themselves.
Yeah.
Because when you have a subtitle, your eyes are naturally drawn, presumably, to the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
What do you think about that in terms of, like, taking the viewer's eye away from, like, the scene itself and just making it drawn towards the text? Is that a problem for you? Because when I was viewing Death Note, I recall like I would have to just have my eyes glued to the bottom of the screen, and I'd feel like I remember feeling like I was taken away from the scene itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. So for the thing for me is that growing accustomed to growing accustomed to subs.
Right.
Fuck my the way of saying things.
Well, fucking
anyway, but growing accustomed to subs, like, you know to look at the bottom because you have to do the translation. But there are some times where I think it kind of maybe takes away from things.
Right.
But regardless of that, I still, even as reading the subtitles, I still see what's going on. I still am able to look up and understand what is happening even while reading it.
Sure.
You're drawn to the bottom, but yet you're still able to look up a little bit as opposed to what is going on. When you're doing dubs and you're able to hear their English voices and understand, and you're also able to look at the screen and not have to focus on the bottom, I will say that it helps slightly to kind of see what's going on. But actually, most of the times when I'm watching a lot of anime, there are parts where they will show the, like, when you're actually looking at the animation that's going on, it's not really relevant. So when you're looking at the bottom of the screen and you're reading what's going on, even when you're looking up top, there's not a whole lot that's really happening. So it depends the scene, it depends the movie, obviously, it depends what you're looking at with animation quality, but I will say that most of the anime that I've seen, at least recently, there are a lot of times where I'm looking up at the screen to see what they're actually doing. Well, obviously I can see it, but it's still not a whole lot to really have me looking at the screen the entire time.
Yeah, and I
It's
think
not necessary.
also, like, as you watch subs, and like once you start watching them consistently, you just kind of read them so fast that you can understand what they're saying at a glance, kind of, and then look up and like watch the scene.
Right. Okay.
And any scene that's like serious action or like something really going on with animation, people typically won't be talking during that point, so it's like you can still appreciate it and like what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there is dialogue, like I said, you read it like that after a certain point.
That's a good argument, I think.
Okay, so my point of view also is that, like I said, I'm studying Japanese as a career.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of times where they'll say stuff and I actually genuinely can understand them. I know this isn't for everybody, obviously, but if you watch enough anime, eventually you can kind of pick it up. You can kind of pick up certain Japanese terms.
Yeah.
But like for me, there's a lot of times where I'm watching anime and something will pop up that they're saying, and I can hear it, obviously, since they're saying it.
Sure, yeah.
And I understand it, so there's no, and like I'll look at what they're saying maybe at the bottom, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I already understand this, so there's nothing I need to read further.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where I'm reading and I'm able to either read very fast or I'm able to understand them to the point where I just have to vaguely look at the subtitles.
Right, as somebody who's, I don't want to say extremely well versed in Japanese or anything, but somebody who seems to get, the basics of the Japanese language.
Yeah.
Now, coming from somebody who seemingly does not understand the Japanese language at all in its fullest, even in its basics, I do find subs to be somewhat of a hindrance in that I do need to occupy my eyes with the bottom of the screen. I can't fully grasp the full picture in front of me. So in that way, I feel like the entirety of this kind of the scene, at least visually, is tarnished in some way, in the fact that I can't fully appreciate it.
Okay.
Which doesn't seem to be the case with you guys, but it does seem to be a problem with me.
What do you guys think about? Have you ever seen like? I know the movie John Wick did something like this where they do like stylized subtitles where the subtitles appear like
Contextually?
in the scene, like around the characters.
Oh, so they're like a part of the scene, like physically.
I've never seen this. No,
I feel weird talking about it because I've never actually seen the movie, but one of the review channels that I watched did a whole segment about subtitles and how they found like the way they did it in that movie really interesting. How like the subtitles appear on the screen like in the middle of the scene, so you can read them and still watch what's going on. What do you guys think about that idea? I mean, it'd be distracting for like anime as a format because it'll be covering up all like everything you're watching.
I would disagree because if you do in fact like incorporate the text in such a way as a visual cue, like in an appropriate composition with the rest of the scene, then yeah, it's probably not visually distracting.
Yeah,
it can be thought of as part of the scene. Excuse me.
I will say going back to this though also, in terms of anime usage with subtitles, I will say that eventually after reading subtitles for so long, you grow so accustomed to reading subtitles at the bottom that you can still pick up what's going on and what's happening in the episode. Because like, I remember when I first started watching subtitles, shit, I was so bad at it. I remember I was just like, I had to like pause things to like make sure I was like reading everything correctly because I wasn't reading right. But eventually it just come to the point where subtitles were kind of like a second nature to me, where I could read them and still pay attention to what's going on and still be fully immersed in the actual action sequences that they were doing and whatnot inside of anime. And it was okay. But the way you're describing that to me for John Wick, it just kind of sounds like they incorporated it so that you could have the subtitles and be involved with what's going on visually.
Yeah.
Which is
still,
a logical, like...
And still read.
Yeah, exactly.
Practical,
but I just think, like,
problem.
It works well for a movie that's, like, mostly in English, and then, like, a few scenes will have it done that way.
Yeah.
But I just think if you're watching a fully subbed anime, it's, like... It'll be hard to find a way to incorporate it into every scene.
Right,
and if it's not consistent, that'll just totally...
That would also just
right.
seem weird to me to have to look around for subtitles when they're not just on the bottom.
Like, at this point, like you said... You can just read them after you've been watching them. The only problem that I have reading subs now is when I've just had way too much to drink and I'm trying to watch a show and I'm like, it's too blurry. I can't read the subtitles.
Can you read the subtitles right now, Scott?
What subtitles?
Oh, they're here. You can't see them?
They're here around. Oh shit! What's wrong with you, dude?
I don't know.
Too
Too
drunk,
much
dude.
blooming.
Anyway, we're gonna cheers off to that. It was a very loud cheers.
Oh, yes.
Sorry to our viewers for that loud cheer.
R.I.P. headphones.
Anyway, fuck. Anyway, I want to move on finally, but one of the things I wanted to talk about for dubs versus subs also is that there's a part of subs that is, since it's actually it's Japanese and it's made in Japan, there's a lot of times where they have things that are cultural to Japan and they play it off for, because it's the people of Japan listening to this, obviously.
Yeah, so
if Americans listen to it, it's whatever.
Yeah, part of the culture.
But whenever they dub things, they like to do this thing where they just take out the actual Japanese part of it and make it more Americanized. One of the things we saw in Your Name was that there's a part where they address the multiple verses of the use of I in Japanese.
Yeah.
Basically, a character is trying to figure out which form of I he uses to address himself. Mm-hmm. But when it came down to the actual dub part of it, and they were doing that translation, they made it something completely different and something just that didn't seem correct for it.
Yeah.
It worked for, I guess, if you're an American and not really paying attention to
right,
it that
but
much.
that's still a huge failure on the part of, dubbing.
Yes.
It's like a failure to do the true meaning of what you mean to say.
But like when I heard that the first time, it just kind of like that really stuck to me because since I'd watched the sub originally and I knew about this part that was very much a Japanese aspect of it, it just kind of threw me off.
It's pretty plot relevant. It's pretty plot relevant in that it helps you start to understand kind of what's going on in that whole story. Like, as the characters are starting to understand it. So, like, when you watch it and you don't get that full context, it takes away from the story.
That was another thing, though, about it, is that, like, I remember when during the part when he was trying to figure out what usage of I he used for Japanese, it was also, like, they replaced it with a part that made it seem like it wasn't that case. Obviously, it wasn't that case in the dub, but, like, they threw it in there as if, like, it was something completely different, and it...
What did they use to cover for that?
They were acting as if they were referring to somebody and they were trying to figure out if it was a girl or a guy or something like that. Do you remember that? It was like girl, and then they were like shaking their head and they were like guy, And then they're like, okay, yeah, guy. But what I was trying to say about this is that, like, they threw in a kind of like a joke that Americans would understand, and obviously that was the case because it's a dub. But they also just, like, got rid of the whole, like, part about, since it was a movie about them switching bodies, which is what Your Name is about.
Yeah.
But, like, they got rid of
No spoilers here.
No spoilers here. But they got rid of that concept of, like, the person who was controlling this body at the time didn't understand what form of eye that they use.
Yeah.
And they kind of got rid of the whole body concept right there when they were doing that. And I think that kind of took away from the movie to me.
Right, like they deteriorated the plot to some degree.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because, I mean, that whole movie is really based on kind of a lot of subtle things that just kind of happen, and, like, you don't notice it at first, but then as you go through and watch, like, rewatching that, even with the dubs, there was so much shit that I was like, oh, I totally missed that when I was just watching it and I didn't know what was really going on.
That's the beauty
but
about
it's
anime.
Like, that's actually important.
There's a lot of times where you go through and you'll see something and you'll watch it the next time and you'll say, oh shit, I never fucking realized that was even a thing.
I think that's fair to say with, like, any medium.
Yeah, that's
like
what
I was saying. Yeah,
that's
It's
fair.
like, the only thing is that, Shane, you and I, like, only watch anime.
I guess that's true.
So it's like...
That's the only thing you have to latch on to.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, just, there's a lot of parts where I'm watching it in the dub, and there's just so much that takes away from the actual, like, value of the original that it makes me not want to watch it.
Yeah.
Do you see any, like, benefit to listening to an anime in a dub format? Is there any benefit at all?
The only benefit that I found is that when you're watching subs, watching that show is something you need to take time out of your day.
Sure.
To sit down
Okay.
and do.
Yeah. It
Like,
takes
I
more,
can't work on, like, paperwork and
Sure.
watch subs because I'll just be like, I'll only pay attention to the anime. There's no way paperwork takes precedent.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I can just listen to what's going on and then glance up at the screen every now and then, like, I watched Little Witch Academia dubbed just because I was looking for something to just put on while I was doing paperwork in my spare time. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, my thing of it is that mainly for dubs is that most of the time when, as at least an American, I will say that if you first start watching anime, I don't think most of us immediately pick up subs.
I think subs at first actually kind of sound weird. Like, I remember before I started watching subs, a lot of the, like, the way a lot of the voice actors sound, I feel like just sounds kind of off because we're not used to people, like, speaking in certain ways.
Enunciating.
Like,
you're right. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
like when I first watched Hunter x Hunter. Is it just Hunter x Hunter?
It's Hunter x Hunter.
Whatever. When I first started watching Hunter x Hunter, Gun's voice was so fucking annoying to me. I hated it. And I remember talking to you about that.
I remember this.
But now I watch it and I'm like, whatever, that's just how he sounds. Like, it's fine.
But there's a lot of times in dubs, like, in that case, where... So for me, I originally started first watching dubs. Naruto was the first dub I had ever watched. And there's just a lot of things that I, like... Okay, so I think it depends on the way you listen to it. So, let's take Durara, for instance. So, me and Scott originally, before we were, like, hardcore in anime, we watched Durara dubbed. Because that was just the format at which we took, because we speak English. You want to go with obviously the language that you fucking speak.
The most accessible.
Yes. Yeah. It's easier to listen to, it's easier for you to follow, whatnot. But I will say that when I watched Durara dubbed, so I watched it fully through dubbed the first time. I went through and watched it subbed the second time. Another thing that I noticed when I was watching it subbed is that, like, there were just a lot of differences in how they expressed things and how they said things. And the voices were kind of hard for me to get into because after hearing the dub for seasons at that point of one voice doing one character, when I moved on to actually watching watching the sub for it, the voices of that character just sounded weird. It sounded not correct.
Yeah.
But then when you go back and you realize that, oh shit, this is the actual format that it was supposed to be originally in. So this is the original voice. So this is the original. I eventually got used to it after watching it for a long time.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of it just has to do with that, like, you like what's familiar to you.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you need time to kind of bypass that to really judge which is better.
I will say though, even with that though, there were a lot of stuff that were translation issues, or just cultural.
That's always an issue when you're dealing.
Or just
with.
cultural
That can be so
issues.
detrimental to the plot itself too. You know.
Like, okay, so
That's why it's so dangerous.
So taking Durara for a case. So Durara was set in Tokyo. It was set in Ikebukuro. So the whole plot line was all about basically this group of people that were living in Ikebukuro and all the shit that went down in it. But there were a lot of different things that I came across when I was watching it that they just didn't really go through with in the dub, that they went through with the sub, because that's just how it went. There's actually a part in the first episode of Durara where they talk about whenever basically two characters meet, and they're talking about, like, one of them is, like, not from Ikebukuro, he's from the country, and basically when he gets there, he's, like, referring to everything kind of, like, in a touristy way, and he's talking about, oh, let's go to, like, Westgate Park, but then one of them is, like, it's Nishiguchi Park, and they're, like, there are certain ways that, like, they do it with, like, how it would be pronounced as, like, a person of that area, as opposed to someone outside of that area, and they did it fine in Durara, because in Durara, they kept most of the Japanese phrases that they used that would have been original.
Yeah.
But still, hearing it in the sub version, there were still differences to even what they said. And there were still differences of how they would pronounce things and how they do. Also, if you didn't know, in dubs, there's a lot of times where they will put emphasis on certain phrases that in syllables. That's what they do. So, like, for instance, if you're using... what's a good word for this?
I don't know.
So there's
Mikado.
So, like, let's take Durara. So Mikado. So Mikado is, like, Mikado would be the actual way to pronounce it. Or wait, here's a better example. So in Attack on Titan, Mikasa. So people use Mikasa, which is the actual Japanese translation, and they'll do Mikasa, which is the way to put emphasis on things. Goddamn, you stop clapping.
I'm sorry.
Does that change the meaning itself, though? Like the emphasis?
It doesn't change
on the sounds?
It doesn't change the meaning. It just changes the way it's pronounced.
I see.
And to me, that's very...
It ruins the experience associated with the culture.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
Just... All they have to do is listen
Like,
to the sub and listen to how they pronounce the name.
All I'm saying is that, like, say, like, you wanted your name to be featured on something, and suddenly someone just mispronounces it the entire show. You're going to feel a little bad about that.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
And I feel like when it comes to subs, there's a lot of times where they just fucking butcher the names of things, and then get off just saying that name the entire time. And I'm just like, did you even watch it to understand what the actual name for that is? Like,
what are some good examples of butchered names that you've heard?
Well, first of all, Hinata.
Hinata.
In fucking Haikyuu, when they were using that, even though it's Hinata, and they clearly show it. And I'm trying to think of a good name there. So there was shit. I can't think of anything really off the top of my head at the moment.
I remember watching Hunter x Hunter. There are two names that really got me, which were Kurapika.
Kurapika?
Yeah, Kurapika. But it's been so... I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's been so long since I've watched that. And then Hisoka, which they pronounce Hikosa, or some bullshit.
Hisoka?
I don't know. I don't remember. I'm drunk.
I'll say this. Fuck you.
What are we drinking?
We just started the whole podcast.
Just redo it just now, as we're almost wrapping it up.
And there's our intro.
Anyway, as a wrap-up thing that I want to do is that, so, one of the things that I did notice, okay, this I was at work one time, and basically, so, for Tokyo Ghoul, so there's Kaneki. A guy who, even if you watch the dub, they say Kaneki. It's done the same either way. So the dub did a good job of doing that voice correctly. There was a guy who came up to me, and I was wearing a Tokyo Ghoul shirt with Kaneki on it.
Oh, no.
And he said...
What did he say?
And he went up to my cash register, and I was checking something out, and he was like, I really like your Kaneki shirt. And he said Kaneki.
Kaneki.
And I was just like, my God, like, can you actually ruin a language as easily as you just did? But, like, the first time I ever heard it, I was just like, I looked at this guy, and I just didn't want to respond. I don't think I did respond.
Subhuman.
I was just like, okay... this is a great Kaneki shirt. It's pronounced Kaneki, by the way. You asshole, get out of my store. Anyway.
This is a great Kaneki shirt.
But anyway, it's different for me, because since I'm, like, trying to learn Japanese, but, like, when people just don't understand the actual way it's pronounced, it's offensive. It's offensive to me. Mainly because, I get it, we're trying to do our own English way, but, like, even when you pronounce certain, like, Mexican or, like Spanish sounding names, whatnot, when you hear it, you still try to give them their actual name sounding.
Yeah.
Or else it just feels stupid.
I always try to pronounce things the right way, but then I also will either just forget how it's supposed to sound and then just go with whatever sounds right, so I end up saying it real cringy and, like, wrong. Or I'll also run into a problem, which I've talked about this with you before, how, like, I'll go from trying to pronounce things like speaking English and the way we pronounce things here to going to, like, the actual pronunciation, and it doesn't, like, my mouth won't adapt. Like, when I'm talking about sword art and I say Kirito, but if I've been talking for a long time, just saying R's how I normally say them, I say Kirito.
Kirito.
Yeah,
God, that's
it
so
happens.
gross.
I know. I hate it.
It's also
it's
like
I just get caught up with pronouncing letters how I'm used to.
It's also like in English when I'm talking to somebody and I'm talking to somebody on anime, I still keep the like rolling of R's and how it would sound like in Japanese.
Yeah.
But I feel like the person who is listening to me who possibly doesn't understand
Like,
shit
they
about
don't
anime,
get it.
they don't get it and they probably don't care. So most of the time I say it in an English way, so they'll just say okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna cut this podcast right now. It was great to have you all listening. I'm happy to have our friend Alex here. I hope that he'll be around to actually be involved in other podcasts.
Yeah, we'll see how the schedule works out, but God, I'm optimistic about it because I surely want to be here. It was a lot of fun, so yeah.
All right, guys. But anyway, we're going to cut it out. Remember to follow us on Tumblr at otakushot.
On Tumblr? You mean Twitter?
On Twitter.
Also follow Shane on Tumblr. What the fuck is your name?
Hideyoshi Nagashika.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hey.
And our SoundCloud as well. Be sure to follow us on SoundCloud. We got to get all of our social media.
Just all the social media. Any social media, follow us on there.
But also, there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I just cannot fucking remember it at this point.
Well, that's real shitty. You should have thought of that.
Well, shit. Anyway,
we'll tweet it out.
We'll get it up. Oh, yeah, that's what I want to say.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, nice.
Remember to, if you want to have any of your questions answered, make sure to send me either an ask on Tumblr at Hideyoshi Nagashika, or send us some type of question on our Gmail account, which is otakushotglass@gmail.com. It'll be in the description. But if you would like us to answer anything or have any topics on newer episodes, feel free to do so. But good night, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Say good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.